All right, brilliant.
Okay.
Israel, this period is on South Africa then and now. Okay?
Okay.
Just give the viewers a little bit of your name, your full name, your age, if you're married, your occupation, and a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name is Israel Abrams. I'm 63 years old. I'm married with three children, and I lost one son. And I grew up in the days of apartheid, living in Clearwood.
Brilliant.
And in 1961, I'll never forget. I was still a little child at Standard One, grade three. And then I remember when they gave us little medals and a South African flag. The old Union Jack, I think it was. The South African flag and a medallion for in 1961 when South Africa became a republic. But as I was coming down, going home with this medallion and the flag, I stopped at a church, and I'm not talking Christianity, it was a church building there. I stopped and I looked at this at a very early age. And I thought to myself, but you know what? What am I doing with this medallion and the flag? Because I can't mix with a white child. I never spoke about can't mix with the Indian or a black and the colors because we grew up together. But it really disturbed me, being a child, that knowing that I can't mix with a white child, and I asked myself what is wrong with me that I couldn't mix with a white child. And later in the years, I found out that psychologically it affected me. It did.
Wow.
Yeah, it did, because I felt rejected, and I wanted to know, you know. And my parents that brought me up, they weren't very educated, and they were hardworking people, but they weren't educated, you know. My father was in the farm.
How did they feel about this? Did they ever talk to you about it?
No, they didn't. They didn't mention anything.
They didn't mention anything.
No.
You just lived okay.
Yeah, we just lived like that.
And I don't want to interrupt you because
Okay.
you started off beautifully, and I
Right.
like what you've said.
Mm.
This is great. And I'm not going to ask you whether it was right or wrong because I know for a fact in your context of the world it was wrong. And I always want to know what brought us. How did they carry on? I actually want to hear more. How did you feel? And you're telling me how you feel, and I thought it was great. How did they treat you? How did those people how did the whites treat you?
Well, at that very early age, we didn't mix with whites. I couldn't tell you that age, but when I left school,
Or even later?
Yeah, I left school in Standard 5, and I didn't even complete my Standard 6 because I was very naughty. But anyway, as I worked, got into the industries, I found out that I wasn't treated right. Like in the frame group in Jacobs Road, Lolly Street, we were the largest textile company. It was a chemical plant. We used to make fiber out of POY, polyoriented yarn. We used to make fiber. These things used to look like, if you know, sea sand, from the beach.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, they used to pull it up 5 floors, and that little pebbles, they used to turn it into fiber, the clothing we wear now. It was a powerful plant. It was a German. So anyway, I worked over there, and then we found out that I worked under an Englishman, was a lovely man. He was an elderly man, and he was from Britain, and he was in the parachute range there. I remember his legs used to swell. Shame, Mr. Pierce. And he used to sit in his office with about 6 packets of 30 Stuyvesant, and he'd bring a lot of novel. I used to run the ship for him with 18 people under us.
How did they treat you badly? I want to know.
No, well,
How did you feel you were?
You see, some whites that came, like the English came, the British, the Welsh, when they came from England to teach us about textiles, because we hardly knew much about textiles. England was a long time in the textile industry. But what happened was that they came from overseas because we lived in apartheid, and they knew the way the South African whites treated us. They did the same thing to us.
Wow.
The same thing.
Wow.
And then what happened, this thing started getting to us to find out, what? When they came to South Africa, they had a free house, free clothing, free transport, because eventually, if they were earning 5,000 rand a month, okay? I'm talking about 1978, 79, 81. 81, thank God, I became the first Indian non-white shift manager in the frame group.
Wow.
And the bosses told me, they said, listen, if I fail the test, because we had 80% foreigners from other countries working there, especially the whites. And they said if I fail the test, there won't be a non-white running the shift.
So sorry, I don't want to interrupt you because I think you're doing a wonderful job of explaining, of going through this. So what you're saying is that even whites from outside the country that came from a place where they weren't using discrimination, they would come here and fit like normally into the situation and actually treat you badly in that way. That's interesting to know that. How was, and I don't want to go, how was, where did you stay? As a non-white, as an Indian person, was there separate areas that you had to stay? Were you allowed in all the movie houses? I know this was the case, but was it really like that?
Yeah, of course. We lived in Clearwood. We had about 40,000 Indians. Wow. We had the largest concentration of Indian population outside India. I'm talking about the early 60s and 50s.
And in the 80s, the same.
It was the same thing. We lived, and we were used to living with our own people.
Did you live? Was it cluster? A lot of people all together?
Yeah, we had about 40,000 people that living in Clearwood.
And your schools? You went to schools?
Yeah, I went to school in the Indian
schools. Did you go to the white
school
areas to school?
No, nothing of that sort.
Were you allowed out? Were you allowed to walk around in the street? Were you?
No, we weren't allowed to go to the cinemas where the whites were. We had separate queues in the banks. Sure. We couldn't sit on the same stool on the beach.
I even remember. Sorry to interrupt you. And I'm just saying. I even remember, like, if you went to the Kentucky or the food place, there was a place at the back where you had to.
Yeah, we had to go there. Yeah, we weren't allowed.
You couldn't stand where everybody would, where the whites would stand. And carry on. Sorry.
So it was bad. It was sad, you know. And
how did it feel? How did you feel?
I mean, there was anger within us. At that time, I wasn't a Christian, you know. Now I could forgive, but that time, being a Hindu and being treated so badly, you know. Because I told my boss one day, Mr. Dave Boddington, he was South African, and I told him, listen, I never asked to be born an Indian.
Sure.
And he was angry with me, you know. He was very angry with me, and I don't know what he told me. And then what happened, we had another manager, Mr. John Adi, I think it was. Yeah, he was from England. And one day there was a machine that stopped on the textiles. I just had a look and I walked away. They came out from lunch about 1 o'clock. So he took a walk to check. We were running some samples on the machine. And when he came back, he kicked me.
You're joking. Hey. Did he kick you?
He kicked me in front of my boss, my big boss, Mr. Boddington, a South African.
Wow.
And Mr. Boddington knew for a fact that I used to preach in the company.
Why did he kick you again? Sorry, I didn't get it.
Yeah, because, you know, they came with this attitude that, hey, you know what, we were no people, you know. You know, they didn't respect us for who we were, whatever. But we must remember one thing. When I worked with coloreds, Indians, and blacks in my company, I remembered one thing is that this gentleman that's working under me, if he's a black or colored or whatever, he's going home to a family that loves him. Maybe he's a community worker. Maybe he's a church pastor. I don't know what they do in the communities. So because he's here, I must not treat him otherwise because I've got a position. No ways. And this is how I won a lot of people in my company.
Wow.
You know, being a standard 5, and people that with degrees that worked under me. By the grace of God.
Israel, can I ask you another question? You as an Indian person in South Africa, and there were other race groups, colored and black, how did you mix with them? Did you mix with them as well, or were you separated from them?
Okay, we mixed very well with the coloreds. The reason being is that during 1948, there was a repatriation of Indians to India, and the Indians didn't want to go back. So 1949, in January this month, we had the Indo-African rights that started in Natal. It was only contained in Natal. It didn't go to the Transvaal or early Transvaal. Now it's Gauteng or Johannesburg. So what happened? That hatred still remained till this very day that I'm sitting and talking to you.
Wow.
We always hear the blacks tell us, you know what, why don't you go back to India? Why don't you go back to India?
What is the problem with the black? Do you have an animosity between black and
I haven't got nothing against them.
Do they have animosity in
this? Yeah, up till this day.
What would the reasons be?
Because they said that Okay, what we heard was that the whites started it. You know,
Carry on. Yes.
they got
Explain.
caught. The faces were painted, and when they washed the paint out, they found out it was whites that started this riots. But the South African government didn't want to stop it. There was a massacre. Our children were getting thrown into fires.
Wow.
Our 10-year-old girls were getting
Wow.
raped. Our Indian parents
Wow.
had to give the 10-year-old children poison
Wow.
to kill them because they were raped by the blacks. They used to be thrown in the air and a spear used to be held down. We got an ashram, a Hindu ashram here in Avoca, where the Indians went, for protection. Eventually, I think it was the British or Indian Navy that was passing here.
Wow.
And India had to give South Africa 24 hours to stop this riot.
Wow.
So
Obviously, in that period, and we know this, that blacks and Indians and coloureds were considered second-class citizens. They had it just as hard as you had it,
yeah,
in different ways. And the white government of the day, with their philosophy, obviously promoted this.
yeah.
They had the advantages of
There was
better schools, and
okay. There are job reservations in our days.
Please, yes, tell me more.
Like the whites could be engineers, pilots, and electricians. The coloureds used to be like on the building trade, plumbing. The Indians were in the shoe manufacturing or labor, but the blacks were more laborers. Now we couldn't do anything, the job that was reserved for the white or anything of that sort. So what happened was that if I became an electrician, it means that I worked under a white as a handyman. So what happened here was that during the time of apartheid, the Dutch Reformed Church, listen, I'm talking out of a heart of forgiveness here.
That's why you're here. That's why you're here.
I'm not holding anything against anybody, but in the book of Acts chapter 17, it clearly states that we were all created one blood,
correct,
but different habitation. So on that ground, the Dutch Reformed Church, which backed the Nationalist Party, separated us on that ground that we are different cultural groups. So we should live with our own.
Israel, I'm coming to the end of this period. Thank you. I would like to ask you about the transition. Hang on before I finish. When the transition came with Mandela coming in, were you happy about that change at the time?
Okay, I was happy, but before I get to that, there's something I need to say. Listen, I don't want to be all negative about the white man. One, the ANC government inherited a country with the infrastructure that you can't believe. We had the best airports, the best roads, the shipping, the harbors, the hospitals, the schools. During apartheid, the white government gave us free education. We had food in school. Listen, there's not everything bad about what happened in the apartheid, but there were people that took advantage over the situation. The whites gave us free schooling, free food, and that. So what happened was that.
When do you say that?
Yeah. Now what happened? I waited for Mandela to come out of prison.
Really? Yes. Okay.
I waited for Mandela because we all heard, in that time we hear a lot of stories. We heard that when Mandela comes out, the whites must march to the Indian Ocean. We used to make a joke, I said, how can the whites stop me being an Indian not to swim in the Indian Ocean? I mean, can't get it right. So, but anyway, it's not all bad that happened. There's some good things that happened. But what happened when, like we Indians in South Africa right now are sitting on a fence. We sat on a fence in apartheid. We're sitting on a fence now in the ANC government.
Okay, I want to, and I'm glad you carry on. This is more like the second period. Now, I want to ask you that question. And this is, I know you're alluding it to now. For South Africa now, as it is today, is it better than it was then?
No, it's not. It's not.
Explain.
It's not. Okay, on the Christian side of it is that when Mandela came out, I voted for the ANC. He was my hero. Okay. And we always looked up to him, and for the years that he suffered in prison. And I even visited Robben Island, the very prison that he stayed in. I met Zuma there, we spoke. And I visited there because I do prison ministries. But what happened was that when President Mandela came out, I voted for the ANC, African National Congress. But then I found out later, the policies was totally against in what I believed. I don't believe a woman should commit adultery. Abortion, sorry. I don't believe, you say You can kill an unborn child, but you get a murderer go free. I don't see the logic in it. I mean, you make murder legally by aborting children, and then what you do is you legalize abortion, you legalize homosexuality, lesbians. I'm not condemning anybody. Don't get me wrong. If that's how people lifestyle, this is how I live. And then when I looked at the Bible and I looked at the ANC, righteousness exalts the nation. You see, now a 12-year-old child can have abortion without the parents. So who is running our lives now? Who is running our homes?
Okay, good. I know I'm just keeping it because we've got a time frame, and I know you've got a lot, and I'm great. It's wonderful. I'm glad you're saying everything. You're doing a great job. I wanted to ask you, employment now. Do you feel with the employment now? How is it with the employment now? Is it better for you as an Indian person today, or was it better then? Do you have all the opportunities that you should, or do the whites still control everything? Be honest.
No, you see, now we got the affirmative action. They look at the population, you know. 16 can be doctors in the blacks. Then we got the population of the whiteys next, then the colors, then the Indians. So what happened is that, and some people still believe that we Indians have benefited during apartheid, which was wrong. We suffered like anybody else. If you look at the history of the Indians that came from India, they lived a terrible life. They were slaves when the British brought us here. You know,
you worked in cane fields.
Yeah, we worked in cane fields, and then most of them died on the ships. They put the men and women together.
With sugar that they brought.
Yeah, sugar. Yeah,
sugar. Am I correct?
So what happened was that we worked hard to where we are. Now I read the other day that with this Indians getting A's and B's, whatever, in the metric pass, they said no, there's something that the Indians are doing is not right. But I like to correct that. Our Indian parents will sacrifice to send a child to extra classes. If the child is bad in Afrikaans, they will get a lecturer after school to teach this child, or English or maths or science, whatever. You know. So what happened? They put a lot into the child. Okay, we used to have 10, 12 children, 16 children with one wife. But now it's dropped to 3 or 4, that's the most. You know, we try to clothe our children, give them good education. And that's all we can do, educate them with power, you know.
My question, and thank you for that. I know you. I'm just trying to keep within the time. I want to get all these questions in. Are you still angry about that? Would you say that it's because obviously you didn't have those opportunities that your kids now have. So you have a lot of black and Indian and colored people of other race groups at the older generation that just are somehow just not educated, and the opportunity of their youth is gone. Do you feel angry about that?
Yeah, because
you must do.
I do, because our children now that have to go to China, go to Cuba, go to India to become medical doctors, you know, and but they get a good pass rate here.
Well, I mean, from you, how do you feel today about your loss of opportunity as a younger person at that time?
Yeah, because apartheid did have a psychological
you weren't able to, and if I'm not correct, because you didn't have the correct jobs, you didn't go to the best schools, you were kept out. Your age group of people that came had missed the whole period of opportunity.
That's right.
Do you feel
because of the job reservation?
Correct, and in life, and in mixing. Do you feel people are still angry about that today? Do you feel they're still angry?
Yeah, they are. There is some anger. Yeah, there's some anger. But the ANC, since the ANC government came into power, we know there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, a young Indian is a pilot for Zuma. You know, when I read that, it at least, you know.
But you didn't have this.
No,
you didn't have it. And how do you feel about having missed that opportunity? Do you feel angry about it?
Yeah, we do. We do, of course, yeah.
There is no way you can go back and rectify it. I want to ask you something else. Do the whites still run South Africa? Does the whites, maybe not in law, do they still run the economy?
The economy?
How do you feel about that?
Well, you know what? This country is still, it's not equal in that, financially.
And would you say that
That's
the
the greatest
whites,
problem here.
would you say that the whites still, and I know I'm going on this, I mean, would you say that the whites still are holding on to what they had? Do the whites still practice apartheid? Is there still apartheid in South Africa but without the laws?
Yeah, especially our age groups. When we do meet a white, okay, I had a lot of white friends because of the church.
No
You
problem.
know, I
Yeah.
still got white friends in Australia and all that, and they're South Africans and very good friends of mine. I will sleep at home, eat what they eat, and they used to come home and all that. But in most cases, there is a distance. That's the truth of the matter here, because you don't know what the white is thinking. You know what, we are forgiven, and but so that's why
Do you think that whites still think that way?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
so.
it's natural
I
to
think
think
so.
that. I mean, obviously,
I
this
hope
is
not,
something that
yeah,
they were
this
indoctrinated to believe. They
indoctrinated,
can't
yeah.
just say tomorrow, like, I'm a changed person.
Okay, okay. Leaving the whites for now. When you go to India, the caste system, apartheid here was like a Sunday school, like a beach party. When you go to India, and they got the low caste and the high caste, you are treated as dead, my friend. They got no respect for you. They give you the menial job of cleaning mess in the drains. You can't even go have a cup of tea in the house. You can't do nothing because of your caste. You can't go to the same well to drink water. You can't even go to the same temple to pray. So when I went to India, I cried the first time in 1998, knowing the Dalits and the low caste, how they treated in India.
Wow.
Being Indian citizen, it's sad. It's sad.
Okay.
You know.
Israel, thank you very much. We're out of time, and it was a great interview. You had a lot to say, and I'm glad you really you spoke with your heart, and this is what we needed. I just want to ask you just quickly, because we are out of time. I try to keep the videos because the length of the videos, people is watching it. Anything else you want to add on South Africa today? Just briefly, any advice for the viewers on South Africa? Any advice for the people today in South Africa? Anything that you'd like to add?
Uh, well, my personal opinion is the Bible, the word of the living God, should be the constitution of South Africa.
Wonderful.
For reconciliation, we need that. We need to forgive and forget. People speak about that, but they don't see it in action. I got nothing against anybody, because we all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. We all have sinned. We all have made mistakes. We've born sinners in iniquity. But what I say is that righteousness exalts the nation. And let us pray for the president of the country, if you like him or don't like him. The word of God says, pray for them that are in power, for the kings and those that are in authority. So pray for President Jacob Zuma and the cabinet of the ANC, so that we will live a peaceable life.
Wonderful.
We came out of apartheid, and Mandela did a great job of reconciliation, but the people in their hearts didn't forget it. That's a sad thing, So let's pray for President Zuma and the entire ANC and the country at large, because we love South Africa. We are South Africans, and I love my country. I love my country.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for the honest and clear interview. Please just press the get the red button. Thank you. And just